Call this meeting to order. Welcome to the Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly celebration of service for October 20th, 2020. I'm your current president, Ashley Sullivan. Thank you for being here. Michael, please show our flag graphic for 15 seconds of respectful silence. Please remain on mute and take this time to personally reflect. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Charlotte Zitlow, who will be offering our reflection. Charlotte?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Well, I'm going to offer a cautionary tale, and it's personal. I hope you'll forgive me. But it's about Rotary too. In 1975, I was on the city council, and we quite unexpectedly, I don't think we expected to do this, but we were faced with a situation in the city of Bloomington where the building inspector refused to get a building permit to some gay people who were going to build a coffee house. And we just, our president, Brian DeCinqua, a wonderful young man, wrote an amendment to our human rights ordinance, a gay rights amendment in 1975. This was pretty early. And it was very controversial, extremely controversial. I mean, it brought out really a real anger in the public. And one of the leading opponents was a man named Don Wagner, who was a member of this organization of Rotary. And he took out ads circled with red flames saying we would all go to hell if we voted for it. It's so, well, anyway, the city council needed 5 votes to pass it. And that evening that we were going to vote on it, there were 5 of us who showed up, plus the mayor. And we had a real serious discussion, kind of exchanging New Testament and Old Testament passages from the Bible and so forth. But we passed it, and it became part of Bloomington's history. Okay, let me fast forward to 1980. I was elected county commissioner, and when I found out that Don was on the county council. And as you probably know, the county council is the fiscal organ of the county. So Don came to me and said, okay, Charlotte, he said, fine, you're a commissioner now, but let me tell you, we work by the golden rule here. And then what's got the gold does the ruling. And so, you know, I found out we couldn't do anything unless we had the support of the council. So I decided, well, I better learn to know these council members so we can get something done here. And I worked at learning to know Don Wagner. And something happened to him. He had a very good friend, Carl, somebody. And Carl had a son who was an opera singer at Jacobs School, a very good opera singer, and moved to New York. This was the early 80s. And he was there for a while and he died of AIDS, the young man. So this was a very important shaking thing for Don to find, you know, to deal with. And anyway, I sympathized with him, you know, for his loss. And we began to work together. I mean, without him and other members of the council, we wouldn't have the courthouse renovated or a veteran service office or a whole bunch of other things. But Don became, you know, we worked well together. And over the years, we worked better and better. We ended up in a car going to incinerators. If you read my book, you'll find that out. To go incinerators. He and Steve Creech and a young woman from the health department, we all went on an incinerator tour in an ugly duckling car. And Don loved pie, and we stopped for pie every time we had a chance. Anyway, in 1988, as we know, the Supreme Court decided that service clubs like Rotary and Kiwanis could no longer not have women in them because it was a tax thing, because members were taking dues as a deduction, and that wasn't fair for men to have that deduction. So women were, Rotary was required to induct women. And Don Wagner was my sponsor to Rotary. Yes, and really, I was so touched. But he said, "Would you mind if I recommended you as a member of Rotary?" And I said, "Don, that was just stunning. You know, that was so I was one of the first group, and because Don got me in, and it was just wonderful." So the moral of the story, I have a saying that I do: never burn bridges. Never burn bridges. Seems to me at this time of divisiveness in our country, we should remember, never burn bridges. You never know who your next ally is going to be. So that's my cautionary tale for the day. Never burn bridges. Love your neighbor as yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. What a beautiful story.
Thank you.
We really needed to hear that right now. So
Good. Thank you. Yeah. Well, it was such a turnaround. You know, it's wonderful. It made me feel so good.
And I think that Josh, just talking to him briefly and when he was in the waiting room, will kind of touch on something like that today.
Good.
The small things that we do make a big difference.
Exactly.
It adds up to big things. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We have quite a few guests today. I'm looking around. Jim Bright, would you like to kick us off and introduce the guests that you see?
Yeah, thank you, President Ashley. First of all, Sally Gaskell has a guest. Sally, would you like to introduce your guest?
Sally.
Okay.
I'm unmuted now. Sorry. My guest is Chuck Carney, who is Chief Spokesperson and Head of Media Relations for Indiana University and a lifelong baseball fan.
Okay, thank you, Sally. We have with us today a number of guests. L.A. Williams, L.A., hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, am I? L.A. is on the Ivy Tech faculty, so welcome.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Del Brinkman joining us today from Kansas. Del, always a treat to have you. Bob Hamill, our honoree for the Bloomington Rotary Toast, renowned sports writer and author. Bob, great to have you. Frank Zapata, one of my good baseball buddies from Royal Oak, Michigan. Frank. Mike Zavalensky, my friend and neighbor. Two of my former students, Sean Micahs, Chicago-based PR and marketing professional, and Jeremy Rosenthal, who's working in the IU School of Public Health, teaching sports communications. Megan Gerhardt is here, the president of our Rotaract Club. Vice President Kennedy Gabor, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Kennedy. Good to have you with us. Past Rotarian Roger Fierce is with us today. Galen Clavio, who's on the faculty at the IU Media School, where he teaches sports-related classes. Galen, a treat to have you with us here. Am I missing anyone? I know there were some others we were expecting, but I haven't seen you yet. Anybody else? Okay, if not, back to you, President Ashley.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for being here. If you are interested in learning more about Rotary, you could probably talk to Jim, who likely invited you, or any of us. We'd be happy to share. So welcome. Thanks to our producers, Michael Shermis, Sally Gaskell, and Natalie Blaze, for keeping everything running smoothly. And our roundabout reporter for this week is Connie Shikalis. Thanks again. Birthdays: Mike Wade, October 21st, Charlotte Zitlow, October 21st, and Susie Graham, October 22nd. Happy birthday, everyone. Membership anniversaries: Lauren Snyder, 11 years total. Kevin Hopper Nudstrom, 1 year in our club. Bill Murphy, 41 years total as a Rotarian. And George Boone, 37 years total. Thank you for your commitment to Rotary and for being part of this family. With that, I have an announcement to celebrate. Anne Wren has rejoined our club and is officially joining the ranks. Welcome, Anne. We're so glad to have you back with us.
You can say thank you now.
Okay.
I'm muted here.
Okay, a few announcements. Our club will be transitioning to a new Zoom link over the next few weeks. It hasn't happened yet because you're all here right now, but we will still be providing you with the link weekly via email. We'll be reminding you often. We'll have some protections in place. If you show up to the wrong place, we'll get you where you need to be. So no worries, but we will be having a new link. So if you've invited anyone as a guest and given them the old one, you'll need to replace that, but we'll provide you with that and we'll let you know. We have a toast announcement from Mike Baker. Mike with us? No, I don't know if Mike is with us.
Yeah, I don't think he's here.
Okay. Sarah, you're muted. Were you saying something?
You could ask Jim. I'm sure he could fill in. He's got the details down to the 10th of a percent.
Jim, you want to share something about the toast with us?
Yeah, just very quickly, I just want to thank everybody who's signed up for the toast. It'll be Friday, November 6th. Again, we'll be honoring Bob Hamill, but Bob would be the first to tell you, more importantly, we're going to be raising money for Hoosier Hills Food Bank. We have far and away a record number of you who've signed up. Again, can't thank you enough. It's going to be different this year. It's going to be online, but Sarah, Mike, and others on the committee will tell you it's going to be great. You don't want to miss it. So if you haven't signed up, please join those who have, and we'll see you on November 6th.
It's going to be a great time, trust me. Hearing all the details every week when we meet has got me very excited about showing up for the show. It's going to be quite the fun time. Okay, we have a special announcement from Aaron Davis. Aaron?
Yes, hi. Thanks, Ashley. Well, our board of directors met last Thursday, and one of the things we did was basically signed on to a pledge that was put forth by a program of Braver Angels. The program is called With Malice Toward None. And we would like to ask the club, I mean, we're signing on as a board, but we also want to ask individual club members to consider signing this pledge. And it's basically to commit to not holding hate against fellow citizens, no matter who wins or loses this election. And the pledge is as follows, and this is a good follow-up for Charlotte, and it comes from our Peace Building Committee. So the pledge is, regardless of how the election turns out, I will not hold hate, disdain, or ridicule for those who voted differently from me. Whether I'm pleased or upset about the outcome, I will seek to understand the concerns and aspirations of those who voted differently, and will look for opportunities to work with people with whom I disagree. And this is supported by Hal Turner and myself. We're both involved with Braver Angels, and as is our CEO and General Secretary of Rotary International, John Huco. He's definitely strongly in favor of this. So it is a Rotary value. It's very much what we need, I think, and Charlotte's on the Peace Building Committee, and we have quite a number of you. Anyone interested, just contact me, and I will put up the link to sign that pledge. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron. Proud to support that as a board of directors and personally, and I hope that you will join us. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Martha Wales. Thank you, Martha, for sending cards to our Rotary family when they have a special celebration or face a challenge. Thank you so much. It certainly brightens my day, and I'm sure it brightens all of ours. Thank you for that attention to detail.
Thank you.
It's definitely noticed, so thank you. RILA is the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, and it is typically an event that happens around Halloween for young adults over at Bradford Woods. This year, they've decided to hold a virtual version of RILA, so we'll see how that goes. But we need a few more applications, and they're due today. So if you know anyone who is interested, 14 and 19-year-old young leaders, emerging leaders that might be interested in this fantastic training, please contact me or Lauren Snyder to get that application in today. I'm going to put a link to the application here in the chat. If you want to pick that up and forward it along to anyone you know, they can drop a line to Lauren and let them know that they want to apply, so that we can meet that deadline today. It won't be in the roundabout because the deadline will have passed by then. So be sure to reach out to any young emerging leaders you know that might want to apply, and we'd be happy to send them to the virtual RILA on October 31st. We have volunteer updates as usual, and I'm going to make this quick. I'm not going to mention all of them, but this Saturday is World Polio Day, and we have an official proclamation from our mayor that it is World Polio Day in Bloomington. So on World Polio Day, we're heading over to our stretch of road on Pete Ellis Drive that we've adopted to clean it up and to be out in public together in a safe way to clean up our road and keep our responsibility there on that very important day. We're this close to eradicating polio, so let's make it over the edge and raise awareness and clean up our road at the same time. It's from 9 to 11 this Saturday. You can sign up. There will be a link, or you can contact me directly. We still have some spots. Plenty of people have signed up. If you have gloves you want to bring that you prefer, go ahead and do that, but trash bags and gloves will be provided. Wear your Rotary gear and let's have fun. The other volunteer opportunity we have, United Way Day of Action Literacy Backpacks, December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. We spoke about this last week. Our district grant project for 2021 is to fill these literacy backpacks for children in our community. They'll be distributed by local organizations to children that need books and other supplies to help them succeed. So please sign up. The link to sign up is through Civic Champs, which is one of our partners. If you are a Rotarian, you are already signed up and you have a Civic Champs account, it's likely your phone number that is your username. If you don't have a mobile number that you've provided, it's your email. If you need help, just let me or Natalie know and we'll help you log on to sign up. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce Jim Bright to introduce our speaker today.
Okay, thank you so much, President Ashley. Our speaker today attracted, as you heard, a lot of guests. Two who've joined us here since I introduced people are two Arizona Diamondbacks fans joining us from Arizona. Tom Rhodes, who's in Cave Creek, and we have my brother, Joe Bright, who's joining us from Mesa. So welcome, Tom, and welcome, Joe. Our guest speaker today is joining us from his home in Scottsdale, Arizona. That's IU alum Josh Rawich. Josh is the Senior Vice President of Communications for baseball's Arizona Diamondbacks. Josh is wrapping up his 26th season. He looks so young. 26th season in Major League Baseball and his 9th with the Diamondbacks. Josh oversees player and media relations, corporate communications, broadcasting, social media, and in-game entertainment. In 2018, Josh received a very prestigious Major League Baseball award that recognized him for his highest ethics, character, dedication, service, professionalism, and humanitarianism. Josh came to the Diamondbacks following 15 seasons with the Los Angeles Dodgers, where he served as Vice President of Communications. He, in addition to handling his duties with the Diamondbacks, he teaches strategic sports communications at Arizona State's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Please join me in a warm Bloomington Rotary welcome to an IU alum, Josh Rawich.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim, for inviting me back here. It's really, really cool just to feel connected to IU again and have just to be able to hear people talk about things in Bloomington is such a cool honor for me. I want to say the last time I had a chance to speak to this group was probably 10, 15 years ago. And I remember it was in the frangipani room in the student union. And I remember as a student walking through the Union regularly, and I'd look in that room and I'd see people up on the dais and I would always think that that was where important things happened and that important people must be speaking in there. And then when I realized that I was speaking in there, I was like, it's just another room in the Union. It's not really anything all that special. But my first few weeks at IU, just this week, as I was thinking about what I would say, I think back to my first few weeks and just kind of how homesick and lost I was, this California kid, grew up in Los Angeles and went halfway across the country. And there were a lot of times where I would wander the campus kind of, what am I doing here? And I remember going to they had a video arcade back by the bowling alley that I would spend just anything that I could do to kind of take my mind off the fact that I wasn't at home. I wasn't comfortable yet. And I think back now to the decision to stick it out, because there were times freshman year I thought I might not come back. I stuck it out and it was the best decision I've ever made. And I owe so much of my life from age 18 on to what happened in Bloomington, to IU, to the people that I met. So much, as you start to hear, it really kind of goes back to that time. So it was just a few weeks after that, my freshman year of college, there's a class I took that was Introduction to Sports Management. Dr. Gary Sales, who's been I think still there, been at the university forever. But he had said, don't be afraid to send your resume to your hometown team. You never know what'll happen. And I didn't even have a resume. I was 18 years old. I was a freshman. I had no business sending anything to the LA Dodgers, but I went and found an advisor who helped me put together a resume. I fired it off to the Dodgers without knowing anybody. And Jim jokes about 26 years in baseball, but I started when I was 18 years old, and I got incredibly lucky to land that first internship, really basically thanks to Dr. Sales and his advice. And I can vividly remember when I called the Dodgers, this was probably November, December, to find out that I was going to get this internship. I can remember jumping up and down in my room in McNutt, not believing that I was going to actually work for a Major League Baseball team. And that's all I've done for the last quarter century. So it's really, really pretty special. During those years, the Dodgers weren't what they are now. We were good enough to make the playoffs pretty regularly, and we took road trips from IU to Cincinnati and to Atlanta, basically to watch my team get swept both times. They'd show up in the division series and they would get swept. But I would get a chance to see a little bit of the Midwest, which I had never seen before. And I think back to, there's a diehard Cincinnati Reds fan who some of you guys may know from Aurora, Indiana. It's Kit Klingelhofer. But Kit really changed the course of my whole life when he hired me to work in the athletic department. I went to tried to be a student assistant there at IU. And I remember during the interview that Kit said, well, we don't hire fraternity kids. If you're in a fraternity, there's no way you're going to be responsible enough for this position. And for whatever reason, maybe it was the Dodgers on my resume, maybe somehow I made an impression on him, but for some reason he hired me, and it really kind of changed everything about the future of my career. While I was flipping through, by the way, speaking of my fraternity, they're going off the cuff a little here, but as I was flipping through, and I can see him on my screen right now, I believe, I'm hoping that the Richard McCaig that's there with the sign is the former dean. We were so scared of that guy. I mean, that was the guy that was going to take down our entire world. And when I was flipping through to see if I knew any names, I was like, oh my goodness, Dean McCaig is going to listen to me speak. This is insane. So anyway, pretty cool little side story. But anyway, going back to Kit Klingelhofer, he, when I was interning at the Dodgers, I was more on the marketing side. At the time, it wasn't called marketing, but it was more the ticket marketing and advertising, and ultimately being in the sports information department is what made me fall in love with that side of the business, and then move over to communications, and my whole career kind of took off from there. And I think back, it is a good thing. I was never particularly involved in my fraternity, but it was a good thing that I was a fraternity kid, because I wound up meeting my wife one night in our fraternity house randomly before a party. She came over to meet to see a friend of hers, and so now I not only do I have my own connections to IU, but obviously my wife Erin is. Our whole family is just, we're huge Hoosiers. We have a dog named Indy. We have a brick outside of Nick's. We've got the bucket downstairs for St. Bismarck. It is still a huge part of our life, everything IU. So in fact, last night she was just looking at the Instagram page for IU and lamenting how much we miss the Midwest colors, and we wish we could. We just don't get that here in the desert, obviously, but nonetheless, it's a big part of our family. So, around that same time that I met my wife as a junior, I took a class there called Technica Coaching Basketball with Bob Knight. And I think back to even that day, I still have the notebook and the lessons I learned. And I remember in the very first class, now I didn't grow up in Indiana, so I didn't have this reverence for Coach Knight that, I mean, I respected him and liked him, but he wasn't, I just remember him walking in the back of the room, and these students just followed him across the room like God had walked in. And we were all so like stunned that he had this presence. And he told us that he was going to teach us on that very first class the most important lesson he could teach us about coaching. And so he looks around the room, and he looks at the middle of the room, and I'm sure Bob Hamill's probably seen this done before a million times from him, if not all of you have seen this before, but he picks a kid from the middle of the room, a little bit heavy set, doesn't look particularly athletic. He says, all right, son, what's your name? And he says, my name's Johnny. All right, Johnny, I want you to stand up, run over to that doorway, and you jump as high as you can and tap the highest point in the doorway that you can tap. So poor Johnny kind of waddles over the door, and he runs as hard as he can. He jumps, and his fingers clip the top of the doorway. And everybody kind of, well, poor guy can't jump very high. What are you going to say? How is this going to teach us anything about basketball? And Coach Knight goes into his wallet. He pulls out a $20 bill. He pins it about 2-3 inches higher than where the kid had just jumped. And he said, if you touch that $20 bill, Johnny, it's yours. And Johnny, sure enough, gets up all of his might, speeds forward, leaps up, hits the $20 bill, and takes it home. And Coach Knight said, it's all about motivation. That's what coaching is all about. It's about motivating the people around you to be better than they think they can be. And I've stuck with that. It's just stuck with me since I was 19, 20 years old, this lesson about motivation. We actually used it. We used that motivation not that long later. A friend of mine and I coached a team at the Boys and Girls Club of 9-year-olds. They were called the Hoosier Energy. I think that was our sponsor. But we wound up, we didn't quite teach them the motion offense, but we did teach them how to set screens, and nobody else at that age knew what was going on. And so kids were just running into our guys. And we wound up going 9-0. We went undefeated. And my favorite moment from the year, though, I remember, was this little kid who hadn't scored all year long. And here he does, he scores his first 2 points in the last minute of the last game. And we're all just going nuts. And I just remember we were trying to motivate this kid to score, and he did. And ultimately, those lessons of motivation and motivating people are things that I still take into my job today at the D-backs, where I oversee the various areas that Jim kind of referenced. And it's most of the public facing stuff that, if you think about your favorite sports team, it's player and media relations, it's our social media, it's what you see on the big screen board, our graphic designers and broadcasts, all those things kind of fall into the world that I get to be involved in over there. So I'll give one more fun Bob Knight story, and then I'll end it. And Bob Knight, or Bob Hamill, can correct me if I have the team wrong, but it ties to my years at the D-backs. We were lucky that Tony La Russa, a longtime Hall of Fame manager, became the chief baseball officer of the Diamondbacks. And he was very close friends with Coach Knight. So he invites Coach Knight to Arizona to come speak to our team during spring training. And so he comes into the locker room, and again, now these are major league players who you think are not going to be impressed by very many people. And Coach Knight walks in, and again, I have flashbacks to being 19, 20 years old, and every eye is trained on him as he gets to the front of the room. And so he starts his speech, and he says, I think it was France, I could be wrong, but he starts talking about the 1984 Olympics and how he was going to coach that team to a gold medal. And so he starts looking around again. I'm having total flashbacks to being a junior in college. He's looking at the kids, or the players in the locker room, and he sees a tall guy and he pulls him over, and he sees a shorter guy, pulls him over. I'm thinking he's gonna be the point guard. So he sets these guys up in the middle of our clubhouse as though they're in the 84 Olympics, and he's gonna map out a play for us. And so he looks at all of them. He says, okay, you're here, you're here, you're here. And he says, the 5 of you could have frickin' beat France. Go sit down. And we all just kind of started laughing that, like, we were thinking we were going to get some sort of actual, like, diagrammed play. And instead he's just mocking how bad that team was. But then he went on to tell us how he would motivate Michael Jordan. And I think back to how he could tell stories, and how he could keep an audience, and how he could motivate people. And I really do try to use that every day. So how did I get to this spot? I know Jim said that this would kind of be a little bit about how I wound up getting into baseball from IU, but I honestly asked myself that question a ton. I mean, you heard how I landed the internship, but I find myself very often as a diehard baseball fan, just blown away at the places that I get to be. And I just had one of these, like back in March, we were getting ready to play a game in Mexico City. The Dodgers were supposed to play, the D-backs were supposed to play the Padres in Mexico City. And so we went to Mexico City to promote this series. And of course, all of this was right before the pandemic. This was like late February. And I found myself in what was the equivalent of the Oval Office of Mexico. We're sitting with the president of the country. And he's telling us stories about baseball. And I'm thinking, how did I get here? And then I thought, IU, I remember being a freshman and an intern, and someone told me you should go learn Spanish. It's going to really help your career in baseball. And so I went back to IU. I took it seriously. I took a couple semesters of Spanish. I studied abroad in Spain. I actually dated a Spanish girl, which is how my Spanish got really good. But I ultimately, because of the things that I did back in Bloomington, I look around the room and I'm thinking, why do I get to be here? And it's those sorts of lessons that I learned back in the day. And now I find myself all the time representing the Diamondbacks or Major League Baseball and all throughout Latin America because of something that I learned back at IU. So I know this year is, for all of us, been unlike anything any of us could ever have imagined. And we went from those really high moments like we talked about, and I just said in March, where I'm pinching myself, to honestly, we had the worst day of my career this year when we back in late May laid off or furloughed half of my staff. And it's not a class you can take in the business school or a conversation you can have with your bosses that can prepare you to take away people's dream jobs. I just think if it was me on the other side of the Zoom call, because you can't even do it in person, it's hard. We're truly ruining people's lives. And in a lot of ways, that's what this pandemic has done for so many of our businesses. I mean, as a team, we're losing $90 million this year. I mean, it's just an unfathomable amount of money, and really no end in sight from an economic standpoint of when we're going to be able to fill up stadiums again. And chances are next year, our number is going to be closer to 90 million than it is to be zero of what we're losing again. And so these are the really, really challenging times where we're trying to figure out how to change our whole business model. How do we operate as a baseball team and just spend less money? And that's hard. But I will say that even in all of that, the thing I've been most proud of this year has been that we basically went into the stadium every day from July 3rd to September 27th, and we didn't have a single positive COVID test. We were tested. I was tested every 2 or 3 days. Players were tested every other day. And MLB just announced this week that they wound up doing 170,000 tests leading up to the World Series, and their positive rate was 0.05. It's just such a minuscule amount of people. We were one of 9 teams that didn't have anybody test positive. And so I think even though I look back, we may not have had the season that we wanted. And sorry, Tom and Joe, I appreciate that we have some Diamondback fans on the line here, but we didn't have the season we wanted, and obviously it was very disappointing, but I do feel like we actually have a very bright future with tons of good talent, and including my new favorite D-backs player is a guy we just got from the Reds, a kid from I think I'm saying it right, Ocean, Indiana. I don't even know where that is, but a kid named Josh Van Meter, who had agreed to go to IU. He had signed his letter of intent and then got drafted. And so when he showed up and he said he was from Indiana, I said, oh, I went to IU. And he said, I almost went to IU. So now I have a new favorite D-backs player. But anyway, I'm really proud of the commitment we all made to each other to stay healthy, stay careful, looking after each other. We really basically just went back and forth from home to the ballpark for 3 months. And for my friends at the Dodgers and the Rays right now, they're tacking on a 4th month where they've just been in a hotel somewhere, really unable to do anything other than work. And I'm proud of what they've accomplished. And I'm sure I'll get asked who I'm rooting for in the World Series, which I know starts tonight. Little public service announcement, 8:00 on Fox. Tune in. But I actually am not rooting. I can't say I'm rooting for the Dodgers anymore. I'm rooting for, I root for people. And I have a lot of friends who are at the Dodgers who have gone through tons of heartache and haven't had the chance to experience a World Series championship. So if they get it, I will be happy for them. And if they don't, I'll be happy for some of my friends at the Rays. And that's really, when I think about kind of who I root for, I really root for people, whether it's Van Meter or whether it's my dad or my brother or my nephew, who are going to become really happy if the Dodgers win it all. I know many of you probably there know Ken Beckley, who used to run the IU Alumni Association. And I think about just the incredibly challenging year he's had, and losing Audrey, just it crushed me to hear what he's gone through. And then I started thinking about, but he's a diehard Dodger fan. And if they win, someone like him is going to have just a little piece of joy. And that's really who I root for, is the people, the fans, the players that I've gotten to know and like. And, you know, some of those people I would say are also in the IU athletic department. Gotten a chance to get in touch pretty regularly here with Scott Dolson, and to see what he was able to do for years and years as the number 2, and finally step up into the big chair. And I saw that the new, I think it's the Jerry Tardy Center that you all just dedicated out there, and made me think back to my years working with IU athletics and getting to work with Jerry Yeagley, a legend, and seeing what they're doing, and Coach Mercer on the baseball team. And IU baseball wasn't really a thing that people talked about when I was coming up. It was years drafted all the time. So, and then obviously I can't wait for IU basketball. Even out here, I'm just constantly locked in on what's going on. We were supposed to go to the Maui Classic. I don't know if any of you had plans to make your way out to Maui. I know it's a little further, but we had plans to go out there, and unfortunately that went by the wayside with this year of ups and downs. But you know, the highs and lows to me are what make sports so much fun. I mean, it's if you always won all the time, it really wouldn't be all that much fun. And IU basketball has had plenty of highs, plenty of lows. I remember coming out there, Jim had brought me out there to speak to some classes a while, maybe it was gotta be 10 years ago or so, more than that, I think back in 2008. And I had the good fortune to meet Tracy Smith, the baseball coach, who's now actually over at ASU. As some of you may, if you follow college baseball, he's now the head coach out here at ASU. And they just hired Coach Crean. It's like the lowest point in IU basketball history, coming off all these sanctions. And I happened to be in town the weekend that he wanted to have a mixer. The baseball team and the basketball team were going to get together. So Tracy asks me, hey, do you want to come on over to Assembly Hall tonight? Our guys are going to be shooting around with the basketball team. And I said, yeah, of course, that'd be great. Well, sure enough, one of the kids on the baseball team winds up winning the 3-point shooting contest against the basketball team. And Crean winds up putting him on as the 12th kid on the bench. And I just remember thinking, A, how cool it was to see that, and B, how pathetic are we that we now have baseball players just showing up and becoming basketball players because they won a 3-point shooting contest. But that's the highs and the lows. And I mean, everything that you all have experienced over the years at the IU basketball, I love that. And I remember Tracy Smith, when he came out to ASU, he had his introductory news conference, and I went there, and I remember him specifically. They said, how are you going to turn ASU baseball around? Because he had just had great success at Indiana. And he said, it's really all about the people. Yes, winning and losing matters, but that's not the most important thing we're doing. We're changing people's lives. We're affecting their everyday existence, and we're making memories. And that, to me, is really what the best part of my job is. Every day I get to go to a baseball stadium. At least I used to. Now I go in every once in a while, but every day I get to go into the stadium. I work for an organization where the simplest little things I get to do can be remembered by somebody forever. Whether it's an autographed baseball we give a kid, or they get to meet a player, or they get a chance to I upgrade their seats. I'll walk over, we'll have some extra, and people will talk about remembering that 20, 30 years later. And it's not me, and it's really just, it's the logo that we wear on our shirt that people have such an affinity for, and that I'm really, really grateful that I get to do that. So I do miss coming back to IU. I will tell you, I was back there on one of my last trips before quarantine. Our assistant general manager at the Diamondbacks is actually a Maryland grad. So he had always wanted to see the Mecca that was Assembly Hall. And we took literally a 24-hour trip, flew in and flew out basically to watch the IU Maryland game. And I'm sure some of you were there, and that was the day that Kobe passed away. And as we stood there in Assembly Hall, kind of watching what was going on and hearing this happen around us, you really realize what an impact sports has on people. It was viscerally impacting the people around us to hear news like that. And this is someone they've never met and don't know, and they're probably Pacers fans, but there's just such an admiration for athletes and for the world that we live in. So, I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions. So I'll end it simply by saying, I know how many of you, it's been a tough year for all of us, but I will tell you that I'm personally really, really hopeful for the future. I believe that really great things are coming for all of us soon. I saw a meme on social media back in April. It was kind of right at the beginning of quarantine, and I saw somebody put on their Instagram page that I think God has sent us all to our rooms to think about what we've done. And I kind of I chuckled, we all get so busy in our lives and things are so, particularly me working 162 games. And I think this whole year has made us all slow down and appreciate the things we have and spend more time with our family. And it's given me just time to reflect on a lot of things. And quite often, as I find myself thinking about what I'm grateful for, it goes back to Bloomington and it goes back to Indiana. And it goes back to the people there that have had an impact on me. There's several of you on the line. I see, whether it's Owen or Galen or Dean McCaig, maybe it was Fear, but whatever it was, ultimately there's the impact that that school and that town has had on me and my family. And I would ask all of you to keep having that impact on that community there, because it means the world to all of us, and I'll always be grateful for that. So I do want to make sure we have time for questions, but thank you all so much for having me, and look forward to answering anything you have.
Thank you so much, Josh. We are going to open it up for questions now, and Owen Johnson's going to moderate in case there's a flood of questions. So if you would please put your questions in the chat, we will get started. Does anyone have a question to kick us off? Oh, go ahead, Owen.
Okay. Josh, what do you think baseball has done right and wrong versus other political or other professional sports? And I presume he means in the time of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think what we did wrong in March, April, and May was we let a lot of the bickering between the players in baseball take center stage. And I think it made people, it turned people off. It just, you realize that it's a business and nobody wants to hear that. But ultimately players have a very few years of earning power, and owners aren't interested in losing hundreds of millions of dollars. So that I think what we really didn't do well was early on, we should have kept all those conversations about what's the season going to look like and who's getting paid what and how's it going to work. We should have let that happen privately, and we didn't. And I think that really left a negative impression on a lot of people. But I do think that once July 3rd came, and that was when summer camp started and the testing protocols and all the things that we did, even when we had the first early on, a couple teams, the Marlins and the Cardinals, wound up with large number of positives on their teams. And everybody thought, there's no way these guys can pull it. This is all going to fall apart. They're going to have to start canceling games. And we didn't. We had a plan. We stuck with it. We made sure people got tested. We adjusted on the fly. So when things like that did happen, for the first road trip I took with the team at the end of July, we were allowed to go out and walk around. We were at least able to go wander around the towns we were in. By my second road trip, they basically said, you're not going anywhere. You are literally in the hotel room, and they put monitors in the lobby, and you didn't go anywhere but the ballpark and the hotel. And so even the adjustments they made, I really think and I don't want to get ahead of myself, we still have 10 days or 9 days left, but if we make it through the World Series, that's an incredible accomplishment that baseball deserves credit for having pulled off, because this has not been easy on people at all. And certainly there's been many critics who have said baseball's got no idea what they're doing, they're going to fail. And if they pull this off, I think they deserve a lot of credit.
Question from Jim Bright. How would you feel if your daughter or son wanted to pursue a similar career in professional sports? And do you think there's a chance that they'll go to IU? And I would add, do you see a woman ever becoming a manager of a major league team?
So just in order of the questions, I mean, I would have no problem if either one of them wanted to follow me. It's probably more likely my son, who's a baseball nut, as opposed to my daughter, who's not all that into it. She's got tons of other interests. And if either one of them wanted to follow me into this world, all I would do is just make sure that they realize the sacrifice. I mean, they've watched it, they've grown up around it, and you realize how often I have to be at the stadium, or I'm on a road trip, or going to Japan for 10 days on a goodwill tour. These are not things that normal people's jobs probably have them doing. And so as long as they recognized what they were in for, I would just encourage them to do whatever they love. And if that's what they love, because that's what I've done, is I get paid to do something I truly love. So if that's what they chose, I would have no problem with it. And I do think that whether it's a manager or general manager or even a player, I mean, I do believe that there will be a woman making her market. There's already a first base coach at the Giants who just this year made her the first female in uniform during spring training. And so I certainly hope that it happens. I hope it happens sooner rather than later. We've seen, I mean, there was a couple of years ago, there's a really talented shortstop in France who was a young girl. And I don't know what's actually happened to her. I haven't heard whether she wound up playing collegiately out there. But anyway, I do hope that that'll happen. And I look forward to being I hope I can be that person's PR person, because it's one of my closest friends in the game, actually, is a woman named Kim Ang, who was the assistant general manager of the Yankees and the Dodgers. And she should be the first female general manager running her own team. And frankly, it's a shame it hasn't happened yet. She's that talented and that good. And I've always told her, like, wherever you end up, just call me, because I'm moving there and I want to be the person that helps you deal with it is going to be chaos, because that's what firsts are. But the media piece of it, I would love to help her through, or help anybody who's breaking ground that way.
Your whole career has been in the National League. What do you think about designated hitter after one season, 60 games of doing it?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I do think our sport needs to continue to evolve, and certainly people like seeing offense more than defense. So if you're a baseball fan, is it really that much fun? I mean, some people like watching pitchers bunt, or the occasional time that a pitcher hits a home run, but by and large, I think it's probably good. I think to me, it's probably one of the things that owners are going to have to give in on for the next collective bargaining agreement, which is at the end of this season. If you think about it, if 15 more teams have a designated hitter, that's probably going to increase the payroll of those 15 teams by $7 to $10 million, if not more, per year. And so the players union wants to put a DH on every team. And I think that, to me, is an easy give for the owners. Maybe not an easy give, but it's something that they can give up, that we've seen can work, in exchange for whatever other, concessions they want the union to make.
Nike is now making Major League Baseball uniforms, and the swoosh is very prominent. Sally Gaskell thinks it looks terrible and asks, did baseball sell its soul to Nike, or can you get rid of the swoosh?
We have not sold our soul yet, though it is not going anywhere. I mean, in a strange way, I'm sometimes amazed that fans even notice that. I mean, like, I barely even saw it, and I'm not saying that trying to convince you otherwise. I know it's there, but it doesn't bother me. And I guess when I look at some of the other sports where they're literally covered head to toe in advertising, I mean, would I rather have a clean uniform? Absolutely. I'm sure everybody would rather have a clean uniform, but I also think, just knowing the financial stress that all of these organizations are going into right now, that you're probably going to see more of those things, whether it's signage around the ballpark that is visible on TV, or unless the players are going to suddenly decide that they're willing to start taking less money to play baseball, which I wouldn't if I was them. Teams have to try to make money as payrolls never go down. They always go up over the course of time. And so does revenue has to as well. So, we've always prided ourselves at the Diamondbacks of keeping we've had like 14 years in a row, the lowest fan cost index, where it's the cheapest amount to go to a game in terms of ticket prices and hot dogs and merchandise. And if you're going to keep those things inexpensive, you got to make money somewhere else, because it is a business. So sorry, Sally, it's probably there to stay.
Back to the designated hitter, as a perfect game means no one got a hit, how does the designated hitter and expanded offensive opportunities square with that?
I mean, it's certainly going to make it harder. I don't know off the top of my head, but I got to believe that there's more perfect games and no hitters in National League history than American League history, just given that there's one ninth less hitters in the National League. But I also think, I mean, if you're lucky enough to see a perfect game or even just be in person, absolutely. But even if you can, even just watching it on TV, and you think about now, we get alerts on our phones every time there's a no hitter going on, and you flip on a certain game because you want to see it. I mean, there might be a few less over the course of a decade, but I don't think it's going to change. I mean, to be able to pull that off, you have to be so good on that day and be, frankly, so lucky that a ball doesn't squeak through or that you don't accidentally hit a batter or walk a batter. So from my standpoint, I think the pros of the DH probably outweigh the cons of less perfect games.
Josh, would you be able to stick around for a few minutes after the meeting to answer some additional questions?
Yes, anybody? Absolutely. No problem at all.
Okay, thanks. President Ashley?
Thank you so much. Josh, in honor of your presentation today, we'll be giving a donation to Amethyst House. So thank you for being here.
It's really
And
cool. Thank you.
We have a few more questions. We'll get back to you in just a minute. We'll formally close our meeting and then we'll pick up where we left off. Sally, would you tell us about next week's program?
My pleasure. Please join us next week, both members and guests of Bloomington Rotary. Please join us as we hear from one of our own, Efrat Pfefferman, the Executive Director of United Way in Bloomington. We'll be talking about new directions at United Way, certainly an important community topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, please share our four-way test graphic and we'll recite this together. Of the things we think, say,
and do. Is it the truth?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Four, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
and fifth,
And is it
fun. That officially closes our meeting. And Owen, we can jump back with a few questions we have.
Okay, Josh, this